Well, good evening. I'm your host, Noel Clubb, here on Hispanic Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app from respective iOS and Android app stores, as the app is absolutely free. And while you download, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. Why? Because we want to hear from you, and especially from you. And of course, remember, Zingo TV is also available on the Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks. Roku sticks also available on all smart TVs from 2016 forwards. Welcome to the show, folks. I'm your host, Noel Clubb, here on Club Tracks, and let's introduce, of course, our cool co-host of the show, and he's the lead singer and guitarist of New York City's classic rock band, The Handful. Please welcome the one and the only Mr. Mark Cool Dude. Duda, welcome, sir.
Thank you, guys. Hey, I'm not worthy. Hey, brother, how are you?
I'm not worthy either, but anyway, we're all here. So how you doing, man?
Pleasure. I'm doing well, man. I can't complain. Sometimes I still do. Who said that, Joe Walsh?
Yeah, Joe Walsh, man. That's right. Good old Joe Walsh, man. Anything new with you this past week?
No, man. I think I was mentioning to you, though, I booked some studio time for the first time since the plague hit, because I'm being real careful because I have loved ones who really can't take any chances. But I'm double vaccinated here and about to be up with my 2 weeks waiting period after the second vaccine. And, it's weird that we're talking about this, but here we are. And I'm getting ready to go back and finish a record that I started, a year and something ago. So
That's right.
I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to seeing the guys. I haven't seen them in a long time,
Very good.
So yeah, life's good. How about you, bro?
Just keeping busy, working away, that's just do my thing, juggle this, working all these different jobs I do, and then the two shows.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats, man.
Yeah, wear a lot of hats, that's for sure. Yeah, it's part of being Canadian. We wear a lot of hats. Eh?
Okay. Learn something new every day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, man, always good to see you here on the show.
Yeah,
real pleasant as always. Best time of the week, I always say. So let's introduce our, of course, a special guest here on the show. And they are Toronto-based bluegrass, country, folk, and blues trio. And this recently released their latest record, which is called Strange Flight. Please welcome Natalie Rogers, Jeff Rogers, and Richard Henderson of The Wanted. Please welcome, folks.
Yeah.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. How you all doing?
Good, good.
We're good. Great.
Excellent. You guys, you're all in Toronto?
Yeah, we're all over the place. Jeff and Natalie are together, so they'll tell you where they are.
So
where's Jeff and Natalie
at the moment? Sorry?
Oh, Caledon. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. And Richard, where with you?
Up in Port Perry.
Port Perry. Oh, okay. Nice spots there, folks. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I was going to ask you as the first question, who was your earliest musical influences? I think I'll start with Natalie first.
Oh, God. You don't want to ask me.
Oh, come on.
Pass. So
Pass.
my thing is I'm a singer first. So growing up, I was always attracted to singers. So let's see. Some of my favorite singers would have been I come from a family that has been very musical, and I have an aunt who was a professional country and western singer her whole adult life, traveled all over the place.
Very cool.
And so I grew up listening to a lot of country and western music. So Loretta Lynn and Crystal Gayle and, all those. And mixed in with that, I also really love classical. So let's see, Nana Muscuri. So kind of a broad spectrum of music. I love classical. I also started listening to folk later on, but honestly, I listened to a lot of Chum AM radio because I didn't have a stereo. I grew up in a trailer park. I grew up in a trailer. So we didn't have a lot of stuff. We didn't have a lot of money. So I had this huge AM radio that I would listen to Chum AM. It was one of the few stations I could get. So I listened to whatever was playing on Chum AM and I would sing along with whatever they were playing. So, I listened to Chicago and Boston and, whomever.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned to sing harmony. I would harmonize with all the music I was listening to on the radio, because, you know, singing unison was boring and harmony was way more fun. So, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, definitely.
Musical influence. And I did Kiwanis festivals as a kid and used to perform in Kiwanis festivals. And so a lot of sort of classical, folk, traditional Kiwanis-y kind of stuff is what I listen to. So yeah, not like these guys. No.
Well,
how
still
about
very
these
eclectic.
guys?
Very eclectic.
Yeah.
No, very impressive, I gotta say. Well, how about you, Jeff? Who are your earliest musical influences growing up?
Well, it's funny when you say that. It was probably my dad. He played mandolin and was part of.
Oh, really?
He grew up in the whole folk boom pre, early '60s.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I don't like to say I was influenced particularly, but the Kingston Trio and a lot of early folk was kind of floating around the air in our house. I particularly like Joni Mitchell. My mom had a love of Bruce Cockburn. And when I would pick up the guitar and kind of noodle around, she would tell me, that sounds like Bruce Cockburn. You should really hear that guy. So he was someone I gravitated to, and yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And how about you, Richard? Who are your earliest musical influences?
My dad used to play a lot of music on the stereo back in the day, and he used to play piano boogie woogie. So, so that was really cool. All the old plastic 78s or the whatever that was, that material I made them out of. So that was my first influence. So I wanted to be a drummer at the time because there was so much rhythm going on. So that was really cool. But then when the Beatles broke, I kind of, oh, here's something new. So I was a Beatles. Yeah, so I was a Beatle fan for about 3 weeks, and then the Rolling Stones broke. And,
yeah.
And that just took me, whoa, actually this is more like the boogie woogie stuff. This has got a lot more earth to it. This has got a lot more grit, a lot more substance. So that's what so I went immediately to that, sort of the British blues. And what brought me back more to North America was John Hammond, one of his early albums. And so in 1965 was the land shift for me when I went from rock really to much more straight on blues in 65.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Very fascinating. And how did you guys all meet, basically? I was kind of curious about that too. How did you guys all meet and form The Wanted? How did it all happen?
Well, that goes to me because I am the sole survivor of the original Wanted. And in 2002, I replied to a Now magazine ad that was interested in getting a bunch of musicians together in a kind of collective to play early Americana roots, classic roots artists like Graham Parsons and others. So I responded to that, and there was about 8 or 10 others that did over a period of time, and so that collective grew to about almost a dozen at one point. And then 2003 came, which was the SARS pandemic, interestingly.
Right. Yeah.
And so, there was about 10 of us, 12 of us in various basements, when we were meeting. And at one point, just like now, it was, well, I don't think this is such a great idea. So the collective actually folded. But there were 3 of us that said, hey, let's form our own band. So we did in 2003 and 2004, called ourselves The Wanted, got a few people coming in. And it was around that time that I met Jeff. And Jeff and I were talking, and I said, hey, I'm in a band. And Jeff said, oh, a band, eh? What do you play? What do you do? And so I told him, and he said, well, I play fiddle. And we didn't have a fiddle in the band. So I said, Jeff, come on over, So Jeff came, he played the fiddle, and we found that Jeff was a good guitar player.
Right on. In a roundabout way.
Yeah. So Jeff joined the band in 2004, and then as always, we started talking about our families and whatever, and Jeff said, my wife sings, and we all said, the rest of us said, yeah, of course your wife sings, just everybody's wife sings, and everybody's husband plays the guitar. So
Isn't that true?
So we said, well, sure, bring her on in. What the heck, we at the time we had 2 female singers already, so that Natalie would have been the 3rd female singer. So Natalie comes in, and Jeff is actually right. He told us he played the fiddle. He was wrong. He told us his wife sings well. He was right. So we asked Natalie to join us in 2005, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And people come, people go, and now the 3 of us are the core of the band. All the others from way back in those days have come and gone. Yeah. And so we're the core of the band, play as a trio a fair amount, but also play as a 4 or 5 piece. So we add bass or drums. The bigger the venue, the more people we have, and our preference is a 5-piece band because you get a lot more things going on. Right. But we're the core and we're the trio.
So your band really is kind of interchangeable basically right now, eh? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so very fascinating, very interesting stuff. Well, hey, over to Mark for a question. He's chomping at the bit over there.
Cool. I'm glad, Richard, that you went over some of that history. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I had sort of another history question. So the body of work that I found consisted of 2 records. There was a self-titled, and there's the new album. So 2003, coming well before the self-titled, you guys are all, that self-titled album is all you guys?
It's the 3 of us plus the sort of other 2 that kind of hung on through that period. So there were 5 of us, but yes, the 3 of us are on that.
Okay, interesting. I enjoy both albums, by the way. Let me just get that out of the way. The new one I really liked. It has a little bit more, as you said, a little bit more earth and a little bit more grit to me. I'm a rocker, so that's what makes my ears perk up a little bit. And so between then and now, there's been a sonic change. So could you speak to the evolution of the band and the sound?
Yeah, Jeff, why don't you go on that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as Richard pointed out, the band sort of started as a real sort of a roots writing collective almost. And so, to be honest with you, I don't want to say we weren't focused on rhythm, but we weren't focused on rhythm players as much as a collective of people who would sit around and pass songs around the group. And so I think you're hearing in that first album a little bit of a reflection of that, and it comes from kind of a folkier place. And, something was always fascinating to me. I joined the band at a time, as Richard mentions, I was playing fiddle. I was really, really interested in old time music, like not just bluegrass, but real, Americana old time. And what's interesting to me is kind of the mix between, you take country and you take blues. And in reality, those 2 categories aren't quite as well defined as people think, or people seem to think, you know what I'm saying? So we were trying to, in some ways, in my mind, I was trying to find the space between country and blues. And I could hear in all the old time music some really, really bluesy riffs. And you hear in blues chord changes a lot of country harmony and other things happening.
No doubt, yeah.
So to me, that first album was about that. It was just a process of discovery, and we did it ourselves, and that's what came out. Elevated the sound to kind of a more, I guess you could say, contemporary,
Yeah, I mean, even the first record, I think it said on it something like, country folk something, or you kind of defined what it was kind of the subtitle underneath the name of the band, right? I don't know if you guys recall that on the cover, right? And this time it's like it's more electrified, which to me is grit. Everybody defines grit differently, but the dirty guitar on it really speaks to me. And you guys don't get in each other's way, which isn't easy. So that's something I heard, because there is quite a bit going on, but not too much going on. You can weave your way into the play of one another, and it all ends up sounding not so busy at the end, which is cool. A thing I noticed is in your lyrics, I'm a probably recovering Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. And so there's Bible imagery hammered into my brain. And so when I write, I do the same thing. The first song, I think I hear about Jesus, and then I'm hearing about God and the devil and all that kind of stuff. So who writes that, and where is it coming from?
Who writes that stuff? Well, two of the songs that are religious allegories are mine, Fire and Gasoline and I Gas.
Right on.
And so, you know, I'm a kind of an imagery symbolism kind of writer, and I'm not a storyteller writer. So I look to those kinds of sources for inspiration, and you know, it's the Bob Dylan kind of
no doubt, yeah.
Approach. And it works for me. Jeff has one on it that's similar as well, which is Before the Fall. But Jeff and Natalie they're both storytellers, and their songs are story songs. So I'll let them speak to how they get to where they get to.
Excellent. You guys mind?
No, of course not. So the first song, actually, I think that you're thinking of that talks about Jesus is actually a Tom Waits tune. And
right on.
Yeah, it's a Tom Waits tune, and it just we decided to put that cover on the album because so many of the songs that we had been writing over the last 5 or 6 years have this kind of deep kind of doomsday kind of theme to it that it's just weird. Over the last few years, all the songs that we've been writing seem to have these really mature, very somewhat dark themes to them.
Right.
And it sort of helped when we decided, you know, what are we going to put on the second CD? We've been writing a lot of stuff like this, and you know, Jeff, like Strange Flight is about teen suicide, and you know, and that's a deep, dark theme, and mine is about spousal abuse. So there's that deep, dark theme, and then there's the Richard's song, which is kind of, I call these, when we're performing them, these are our doomsday, our Armageddon songs, right? And it's just odd that it all came out during a pandemic, that when we ended up releasing this, but it's just where I think we've all been going with our writing, and I think your comment about us not stepping on each other's toes, I will tell you, 10 years ago when we were playing, that happened all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
All over each other. So the fact that we're not doing it now, it's like, thank you. We've worked so hard to get to this point where we don't do this anymore, because it's not been easy, right? You take 3 prima donnas and put us in a band, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But we got there, and it's communication and cooperation. It's what gets us there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had many an argument start with, "Dude, you're stepping on my lead," you know. So I get it. No, it's very cool, and it's a kind of thing where, you know, sometimes when you hear bluegrass influenced music, you know, there's a lot of just, it sounds very busy at times, depending upon what your ears are. This has a different kind of feel to it, you know, Fire and Gasoline is my favorite song on it. And one of the things I really dug about it, again, was the guitar, the dirty guitar. So is that all lap guitar, or does somebody have like a Telecaster plugged in or something?
A lot of it is the lap steel, because I play through vintage amps and low power ones with everything dimed pretty well. And nice. So that's the kind of breakup I'm looking for, you know, and as you point out, that's a big step from the first CD, where everything's really acoustic. You know, a lot of the same kinds of licks and things going on throughout the band, but the way that it's presented that is really significantly changed. I kind of forget what Jeff's playing in that, but Jeff too has gone electric from an acoustic guitar. Right. And he's got some crunch on his guitar too, because that's the kind of body and substance that we're now striving for.
Right. I know, but it's not like that, you know, Dylan Goes Electric thing where it's because it's it's got like some heaviness to it, you know. It's cool. I think it gives the record a more modern sound for sure. I don't know, what do you think, Noel?
No, I agree. It does. I actually like the sound. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that guitar sound. Reminds me of Band of Joy, Robert Plant, going back a few years ago.
Yeah, I hear you. It's funny what you hear, because I'm hearing everything through my experience. So sometimes I'm saying it reminds me of Mike Campbell from the Heartbreakers, or something like that, you know. And so whether or not it's what he intended, we all kind of hear it or see it through our own prism. So that's interesting.
Correct.
Yeah. I was wondering what you thought about that. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just thinking as you said that, one of the CDs, one of the albums sounds that was very influential to me, I think, over the last 10 years was the Raising Sand, the Robert Plant, Alison Krauss.
That's great.
Oh yeah,
they're a huge hit on that record too.
The sounds of the guitars on that album are amazing. It's this blend of kind of acoustic and electric, and there's some very distorted stuff, and then some less distorted stuff. I think that's kind of the vibe we were shooting for in some ways, I think.
Oh, cool. So Noel heard that right on. So
yeah. Man.
Cool, bro.
No, I do hear that too. I hear that song. You have that dirty guitar going on. And I actually love that sound. It's very, it's very, very appealing. It's very saleable. It's a big scale. And it's great stuff.
It's interesting that it's done with a vintage amp, because I know, and maybe Natalie, you know, as a singer, sometimes we use vintage microphones, right? If we want to get a certain sound that we can't get from a plug-in or from something that's, you know, an emulation device. So that's really cool. Yeah. Well,
I was going to ask you guys about your track "Stand Up," which I think is a fantastic message behind it. You know, stand up, stand your ground. You know, I love that kind of message. So I'm going to ask you guys: was that song written as a collaboration, or is it written by one of the individuals of the group and kind of brought to by the circle and kind of worked on it thereafter? How did that song unfold when you're writing it?
So we, as a trio, were actually at Folk Alliance International Conference in Montreal. In was that 2019? 2019. Yeah. Anyways, we were in Montreal, and Jeff and Richard went off to listen to a performance, and I was in the hotel room, and Jeff had a riff. He had a string of chords, and he kind of played it for me, and he said, you know, I've got this riff, and I'm thinking it could be a song. And he sort of hummed a little bit of a melody line, and he wrote out the chords for me and left me with it. And he and Richard went off, and I'd been at the conference, I'd been seeing some really strong female performers, and sort of that was percolating. And then I had just finished reading a book called Educated by Tara Westover, and it's about a woman who grew up in a fundamentalist religious family in the Midwest US in the 1980s, and I mean, it's different, but the idea is she was fighting back against oppression, or gender-based oppression, and I just had been wanting to write something in that vein, and so I took Jeff's, you know, his chord progression and his little bit of a melody, and it just morphed into a song, and it took me about an hour and a half to write it. So I had the melody going through my head, and then the lyrics just kind of fell out onto the page. So it's a collaboration between Jeff and I, but the lyrics are mine. The story is mine.
They're all yours, yes. No, great track, guys. It's a great.
So I do have to say though, like my favorite part of that song, and I say this to Jeff all the time, and he's like, yeah, whatever. But we had performed that song for a couple of years before it came time to do the CD, and he'd come up with a very kind of melodic sounding guitar solo in the middle, and it had always kind of bothered me, because at that point in the song, this is where she's fighting back, you know, and so I said, it's too sweet. It needs to have some grit to it. And so he went down in the basement and he played with it for hours and hours and hours. And this, what he came up with, which is on the CD. And when I listen to it, I don't know if you pick it up, but I can actually hear sirens. You know, the sound of, you know, like the police are coming, the cops are coming, you know. know, so it was much better. And Richard says it sounds like punk. So it's like, yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted. That kind of
So mission was accomplished there. Mission was accomplished. Yeah, very cool. A great, yeah, great single, great solo. Yeah, well done solo there, that song. Guys too. With your producer, you have Cowboys Junkies, Michael Timmons as a producer on the album. How did you guys all meet?
When we did our first CD, we produced it ourselves. And when we started talking about doing a second CD, we all thought we'd benefit from the experience of a producer and the input of a producer. So I looked around for ones that I thought might be available and that we could get. And I suggested maybe Mike Timmons. And the reason why I suggested him was because I found a great track, a great album that he had produced by Jerry Legier and The Situation.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's a lot of, and the album is Heartbreak and Nonsense. And there's a lot of real grit, but yet minimalistic grit.
Yeah.
It's not overproduced. It's very, direct. Not a lot going on.
Yeah.
And, but very in your face and with a lot of depth. And I thought, oh well, that's interesting. And I thought that's where maybe we'd want to go. And Jeff and Natalie agreed, so we met with Mike, and Mike said, "Hey, I think there's stuff that we can do here. I think there's a spookiness to that's a word that he used. I think there's a spookiness to your material that I'd like to bring out." And so we said, "All aboard," and went on from there.
No, that's quite interesting. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Well, hey, back over to Mark for a question or two.
Yeah, when I went to watch your video on YouTube, I was caught by, you have a fair amount of content on there, and some of the gigs looked really interesting. Quite a few people at an outdoor gig I saw there. So for live shows, you mentioned that there was a collective, so there's like a scene for what you guys do, like a roots music scene that looks like it has some oomph to it by the number of guests that I'm seeing at some of these gigs. Is that the case?
I think that's the case selectively.
Okay.
Those gigs tend to be folk festival gigs. Mm-hmm. And there's quite a number of folk festivals throughout Ontario and even the country, but Ontario is the seat of them mostly. And some of them are big draws. Yeah. So you get a lot of people and a lot of really interested people and people who are there to hear the music and there to talk to the performers.
Yeah.
So there are not enough of those. and they're fading fast because they tend to be the older age demographic that likes that music and goes to those kinds of things because it costs a fair amount of money for a big event like that, and you usually have to get a hotel and whatever.
Yeah.
So those events are in eclipse. And that's sad. That's sad for music generally, but it's particularly sad for us.
Okay, I got you. But I mean, there's rootsy music. I mean, if you want to go to the extreme, The Dead is a destination show. Even with Jerry gone, people will book a hotel for days and spend some cash. So I'm glad at least there's a couple of festivals and some things for you guys to do. And it looked like no matter who they were there for, you got people up and dancing. So that was cool. In terms of the lockdown, what's gone on the last year, you haven't been able to perform, and you just when did you finish the record? Did you finish it during lockdown or before lockdown?
Yeah, we finished it. We finished the recording process in September of 2020 during the lockdown. So it was kind of, we were lucky that, we had started probably December. We started the planning November, December of 2019. Is that right?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah. So the bulk of the bed tracks with all 4 or 5 of us were, with the rhythm section, were done in February. So literally a week before the lockdown.
Well, that's terrific. And during the lockdown, with so much of the album completed, did you find yourself writing at all? And how did you take advantage of the time, and how did you make lemonade out of this big lemon?
Well, it's funny. We actually we postponed the release of the album for about 6 months. And I have to say, I was really happy about that. The fact that it gave us more time to finish the recording. We came back and we actually redid a couple of tracks.
Wow. Okay.
On an individual basis in the studio. I was happy to have 6 months or so just to listen and to sort of feedback and reflect and do a couple of other interesting things that I think had we stuck with the original schedule probably wouldn't have happened. So
that's excellent. Yeah. Were you able to perform virtually at all, together or solo?
No.
Okay. What are your plans? Is it too soon? I'm down in New York, so where you are, is it too soon to start planning live shows and everything else, or do you have anything planned yet?
It's not too soon to plan, but the plans are awfully fluid.
Right.
We figured that maybe in the fall that would be when venues would open up and people might be vaccinated and there might be moves to get back to live performance. So we have booked 3 or 4 gigs starting in September. But I think they're optimistic.
Okay. Understood.
So
yeah.
We'll see, and I'll continue to try and book more of those. But we don't. We've talked about doing live streams and whatever. We're not in the same bubble, and certainly the other 2, bass and drummer, they clearly aren't. They're far out.
No, I get it. Yeah, I've only been able to perform without my band. I hadn't done that in 20 years.
Yeah,
I had to, or I couldn't play. So
right.
I get it. So in terms of this record and promoting the record, I mean, it really doesn't matter if you guys go out right when the record comes out, right? Because I mean, are you primarily a performance band?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you now you have 2 albums worth of material, but I imagine do you cover some traditional songs or some other songs? What would make up a typical set, a live set?
Well, I usually do the set list, but I can tell you we have we played gigs that are 3.5 hours sometimes, so we can keep going for a really long time if we have to. We have a lot more originals than are on the new CD.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have some originals that were on the original CD, plus we have some others that didn't make the cut to the CD.
Yeah.
I would say right now, out of a 3-hour gig, I would say maybe 50%, sometimes more, is original material. Certainly the covers that we do will not sound like the song you've heard before, because we don't ever play anything the way other people play it, because that's not our thing. Our thing is to take something someone else does and to make it our own, right? And part of that is instrumentation.
Yeah.
Part of it is because I'm a girl and we do a lot of stuff that's, traditionally sung by a guy. So we, that's going to sound different. Plus, we all have our own take on how we interpret songs. And I have a certain kind of feel that I bring, and Jeff's kind of a rootsy, sort of old-timey kind of guy, and then Richard's got the blues, but then Jeff's really into jazz, so he'll slip some jazz chords in there, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know, it's a mashup.
When I heard you guys do Wayfaring Stranger, which is killer, that's a bold move, because there's so many great versions of that out there. Is there a version that speaks to you more, or that maybe influenced your rendering of the song more than others?
I think the Jack White one, probably.
Cool.
is probably the one that is most familiar to me anyway. But yeah.
I think he played that with one chord almost.
Yeah.
Or maybe two chords. Whereas the traditional way of playing it is almost kind of there's this major modulation in the middle of the song that I just never got with. And his just had that, this is what I'm talking about, that old time feel.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
so pop.
Yeah.
And so we thought, let's take that and let's do our own version of it. So there you go.
No, it's great. I mean, I think my favorite version was probably Laura Love. I don't know if you know who she was, but he's a multicultural sort of world music person that took it and made it her own. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Noel, back to you, man.
Sure, man. We'll do, eh? Go back to recording your songs in the studio. Do you guys prefer recording your songs live? Is that kind of thing you prefer to do? I'm quite kind of interested.
Yeah, it's certainly what I like to do. You know, live from the floor is really how I like to play. I like it to be a performance.
Yeah, right on.
Which is, you know, different than our first CD, whereas our first CD, we really like took things apart a lot. This one, except for the pandemic issues,
Yeah.
you know, almost all the songs were played live, you know, in a 2-day period, and bed tracks recorded, boom, done. And then there were some things that we changed, and as Jeff said, some different additions and different approaches. But yeah, that's what I like, and I don't know if that's exactly what Jeff and Natalie like, but that's what we did.
Well, I liked it. How about you, Jeff? And how about you, Natalie? Is that your preference too, is playing live when you're recording?
To record live. Yeah, absolutely. To record, it just live off the floor just has a more organic feel. I mean, it's the style of the music we're doing. It doesn't sound good when you record the kick drum on one track and then the snare on another and then the lead guitar. You know, it just I think there was only one song that we kind of pieced together because we came back after the pandemic had started, and even on that was Strange Flight. I think we did the guitar, the bass, and the drums. So basically the rhythmic kind of core of the song was done in, you know, all around the room, one take, live off the floor.
Yeah, and because I think we are largely a performance band, like 95% of what we do is perform live. And certainly over the years of doing that with each other, it's created kind of a dynamic that when we play together, it brings out elements in our performance that I don't think in an artificial, you know, separate everything in a studio, I don't think it would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly
Totally agree.
harmony, you know, when Jeff and we kind of get each other going a little bit when we're doing harmony, and if you do that in isolation, you don't get that same flow.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. And so it's like kind of that intangible element that kind of comes into play. That there's intangible things, this connection there. You know, it's like you're saying, it's so true. You can't get that right in isolation, and it's so true. I'm definitely a big fan of recording live. You know, absolutely. And do you guys have any plans for your next single? It's too soon to say that. Why don't you have plans for the next single from the album?
Good question.
So you hear that?
What have we got out now so far? We've got Strange Flight. We've got Stand Up.
Before the Fall.
Do we have the others? I'm sort of.
Yeah, Before the Fall, Strange Flight, and Stand Up. So we haven't talked about a fourth, but you know, because we thought we'd be doing other things, but if this pandemic keeps going, that might be a good idea, and then of course we'll do one of mine.
Yeah, I think
Fire and Gasoline. That's my vote.
Well, this can be an organizational meeting. You guys can have a vote now.
Excellent.
You heard it
Does a
first.
vote count? Does a vote count here?
Well, one of them does.
Well, back over to Mark.
So obviously you guys come from a collective. You told us that you're collaborating with one another. Have you done any outside collaborations, or are there any that you'd like to do that are on the horizons, or even just kind of a wish list?
That's a good question. You know,
Tough
we
question.
haven't, as a group, we collaborate with each other. We've done some, you know, back-to-back shows with other musicians and people that we've played with around town. The one collaboration that I found was a lot of fun, and maybe we should do more, was at the Mariposa Folk Festival. You know, they put us on one of those workshop stages with people you've never met before, and there's no prep, and you just kind of riff off each other and try to stay out of each other's way and back them up. We played Alfie Smith, who's a Hamilton blues guitar player, I think. Richard, is that right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
Another guy named Blind Boy Paxton, Jerome Paxton, goes by Blind Boy Paxton. I think he's from New York. So, Mark, you might know him.
You might know.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell, but that doesn't mean anything necessarily. I haven't gotten out much lately.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun doing that. It would be fun to do more of those.
And there's not as much blues in the city as there used to be. Terror blues is still there. But Manny's Car Wash and a couple of, even BB King's, so commercialized, that's no longer there. So, you know how it is. In a given city, the scene's always sort of in flux a little bit. That's awesome. So, in terms of if you had like a dream collaboration, is there somebody that, any one of you guys would love if you could plug them into the album, you had a budget, and you could just, you could go and grab somebody out to sit on a couple of tracks. How about that?
I'm waiting for Jackson Brown to give me a call.
Right on. Okay.
Come on,
It's
Jackson.
interesting for me to hear where it all comes from. Like you say Graham Parsons, but I only know Grievous Angel, like most people that aren't. You know what I mean? So I kind of like to hear what where you guys are coming from. How about you, Natalie?
I really like Emmylou Harris a lot. I listen to their trio stuff. So Emmylou Harris, Dolly Parton, and Linda Ronstadt. I love that collaboration, those three women. I would love someday to perform with a really strong female singer who isn't me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
With myself on CDs, so it would be really great to perform with another strong female vocal. Not that there's anything wrong with you, honey, but just another strong female.
I get it. Yeah, it's interesting, and I got to say it. I have a confession to make. Although my wife knows this already, and she's sitting here. You guys don't. My first crush, Linda Ronstadt.
Ooh, yeah.
That's
a good one.
Oh my God.
So that was me. I found her mesmerizing, in the 70s and 80s and when I was growing up. So that's interesting.
That is.
Noel, how about you, man?
Sure, man. Well, this is actually for all of you guys here. So what's some of the best advice you've ever been given during your career, during your journey to music? What's the best advice you've ever been given? Is there a line of the best advice you've ever been given? If so, will you share with us?
My mother told me, get some sleep.
Get some sleep, eh?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was on the road a lot in the early 70s, that's what she'd say.
Well, that makes more sense. Early 70s on the road. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
Thinking about that more recently, I would say Michael Timmons actually gave us some pretty good advice on the CD. One piece that I will always remember is don't worry about the mistakes.
Yeah.
Let them live.
Let them happen.
Yeah. It's like, no, that is the coolest chord you've ever played.
By mistake.
It is something to avoid perfection, and I think that kind of goes with playing live off the floor.
Yeah.
It sounds better when you just let things breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mark and I talk about that a lot too on the show, and yeah, totally agree.
Absolutely. And it's a challenging thing for a producer to produce a band that plays 99% live and do that band justice, you know? So it speaks to your decision that you guys are happy with the record. So that's pretty cool. I'd love to play the Desert Island Discs game, maybe like 2 or 3 each, you know? So if you guys were trapped on a desert island, we'll start with you, Jeff. You can only take like 2 or 3 records. What would you bring?
I have one. Long John Baldry's "It Ain't Easy."
Yeah, right on.
That was an influential album for me. It
That was
sort of
good.
blew my mind in terms of the blues
And British blues in general, I guess. I
Yeah.
think Richard mentioned some earlier.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool. That's really interesting. Natalie, how about you?
Well,
I know you listen to the AM radio, but
Jeff and I are in the same island. I'm definitely bringing a Beatles album.
Oh no.
I love the Beatles and the Stones. They're the only 2 bands when I play their records I don't skip songs. So I know what you mean. How about you, Richard?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, John Hammond, "So Many Roads,"
Yeah.
1965 album. I'd have that one, and I'd take "Exile on Main Street," and I would take "Feet Don't Fail Me Now," "Little Feet, Little George."
Terrific. Yeah, good stuff, man. You listen to Blues Breakers at all? I imagine you do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. John. You mean John Mayall?
Yeah.
And, yeah, like for a period in the mid '60s, that they were just incredible.
And
they
it was
had
grad
clapping.
school, for the
Yeah.
guitar players.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the guitar players out of Britain were the best in the world. And then they started listening way more to the Chicago guitar players, and they morphed into very good Chicago guitar players. And
Buddy Guy and that type of thing.
Yeah, and that was a huge mistake for Clapton and all of those guys. But for the mid '60s, John Mayall and Blues Breakers, fabulous.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so I mean, I can definitely hear some of that, and there's a lot of grit in that British blues movement for sure.
Absolutely.
It's not a clean type of thing. So that's really interesting. So how can before we go, how can your fans kind of stay in touch with you during this? I mentioned you were on YouTube. Do you have a website? Do you have social media presence? Who can speak to that?
Richard?
Yes, we have a website. The website is thewanted.ca. Thewanted.com was already taken, but thewanted.ca is our website.
Cool.
We have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel, if you search for the space Wanted Live, one word, you'll get us. And Instagram is the handle is @theWantedLive with an extra E.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, those Instagram handles are at a premium. I've got a odd one too.
Yeah.
I think somebody squatted on all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's terrific. So you got the new record out. Lots of ways that your fans can stay in touch with you. We'll look forward to this pandemic ending for everybody's sake.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you guys stay in touch, and please let us know how you're doing.
Thank you very much, Mark.
You're welcome. To everybody else out here, thanks for watching. This has been Club Tracks. I'm Mark Duda. Don't forget to download the app. Take care. Peace.
Thank you. Good night.
Cheers, Mark. Bye.